Hi, how are you doing,
Hello.
Andrea? How's the last week
Amazing.
been treating you?
You know, we've been busy. I'm really busy. fighting corruption everywhere, right?
When were we not busy? I don't remember that. I got to meet Laura Logan this weekend. It was my first time meeting her, and she gave a quote that I've used many times, and this is just so helpful because some of these fights are not fights we want to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting in spite of it.
Amen.
And I was like, well, that's very helpful because sometimes I'm in fights I don't really care to be in the middle of. But
We
you have really taken on a big fight. Tell me about what you're in the middle of right now.
Well, not me myself, but people that I'm helping get the word out on. As we know, Tom Renz is involved with the Geofight.
Mhm.
The Geofight filed their first suit of many, but this is a great step forward in fighting geoengineering and the poisoning of our skies. And you can find out all about it on the geofight.com. But this lawsuit is groundbreaking. I think your audience especially is going to enjoy today's show talking to Blake Horowitz, the attorney behind all of this, because the lawsuit itself, I've been saying since I read it, since we've been publishing it, the press release is right there on the top of their Twitter. It's geofight_com on Twitter, and then the geofight.com, where you can read the full filing. And you, with your paralegal background, you've got to read this, Charity. It just kind of like, it's the education framework of what's going on. Why? I mean, we're all seeing the lines in our skies, the trails. We're all
Right.
feeling it. You and I talk all the time about the poisoning. We see, what's going on with fighting in the Maha space with glyphosate and the poisoning
Right.
of everything. And you're there in Oklahoma with all the ranchers that are seeing it, fighting the data centers and the, all the nonsense of the Green New Deal type stuff that they've tried to bring in that's only poisoning and not helping. But
Yeah,
this
I think
geoengineering
that
lawsuit is phenomenal. It's exciting, and we're just kind of screaming it from the rooftops, trying to get all the patriots to hear about it.
I reviewed it a little bit before we came on, and I'm quite fascinated with how that turns out and what exactly is going on with it. I was really interested. Well, we should bring the attorney on.
Yeah, let's bring Blake on. Blake Horowitz, the lead attorney on this suit, and he'll answer any questions we have.
Yes. Well, hi,
Hi,
Blake.
Blake.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming on.
Very
Um,
well.
well, before we get into that, you want to give us a summary and tell our audience what is going on. What is going on with this lawsuit? Most people aren't aware. I will be putting a link to it on when we put it up on Substack.
Yeah, so we decided about 4 months ago to generate the Geofight, which is a group of lawyers, Nicole, Tom and I, Nicole Pearson, Tom Rentz, and
Mhm.
myself. And our goal was to attack aggressively this geoengineering, do everything that we can to stop or intervene in this worldwide effort. So fortunately, we were able to get a hold of, and who contacted us was Justin Mabey. He's a atmospheric scientist who worked at University of Colorado. So it gets a little detailed, but at the end of the day, the federal government through NOAA, which is a entity that works with weather, works with the ocean, and there really are sort of the scientists on behalf of the United States government. They have a collective agreement with the University of Colorado, so those guys work together very carefully. And that is where the world's historical weather data was housed. So the world's data, historical weather data, which would help demonstrate, is the world getting a little warmer? Is it getting a little cooler? What's really going on? It's all housed there, or it was housed there. And our client, Justin Mabey, the atmospheric scientist with a PhD in atmospheric science, he was responsible for maintaining it, for keeping it, make it available to other scientists and whatnot. So this was information that was collected over 100 years, 100 years for the United States, meaning, 100 years for the world, housed in the United States, in Colorado, and housed on behalf of the United States and the United Nations. So it was a pretty big deal in terms of keeping this data in its proper form and easily available to other scientists. So what happened is it started getting destroyed. And he blew the whistle on it on a couple of occasions. And as a result of blowing the whistle, they started to retaliate against this scientist. He's just a scientist. And top guys at NOAA and the University of Colorado started to retaliate against him. So there was one other aspect of retaliation as well that the lawsuit involves, which concerns espionage, where some individuals decided to, from his point of view, engage in what he believed to be suspected espionage. And that also is part of the lawsuit. That espionage also has to do with geoengineering, basically trying to get a hold of really important what data or machines that help diagnose what the weather is on a daily basis. So at the end of the day, he was retaliated against. And what his belief is that the reason for the destruction of this historical data, the reason why they want to get rid of it, is so that they can create whatever narrative they want to. They can change history so that you can now say, well, look, the world's heating up and we need to start painting the skies, and man needs to get involved in basically God's earth and in the world, in weather. Forget about the first couple, 3 or 4 pages of Genesis, just forget about it. And man needs to now take care of business. And with our computer models and our spraying the atmosphere, man needs to start changing what's happening with our weather.
That's terrifying and unfortunately not surprising. That's phenomenal. Well, I had read something, you guys were worried also about potential foreign access to unrestricted areas. So,
Right.
or you
Well,
restricted areas.
Well,
Right.
generally what it is there's about 5 corporations right now that, so the word foreign is a bit of a caveat. I'll explain that in a moment. But there are corporations incorporated in the United States, and they're allowed to come into our atmosphere right now, today. And as long as they give NOAA, that federal agency that handles weather for the United States and diagnoses weather and basically reports on the weather and the oceans and whatnot. So I'll just call it NOAA for the rest of this meeting. As long as they give NOAA 10 days notice, just give them notice, then they're allowed to go into the atmosphere and spray contaminants into the atmosphere. One of these companies is called Stardust. And the central character of Stardust is from Israel. So that's how people get foreign. But they are incorporated here in the United States in Delaware. So he is a foreign scientist. He's an atmospheric scientist from Israel. And what's of import there, I guess, when you look at it from a quote unquote foreign point of view, is that you can be from a foreign country, you incorporate in the United States, and then you're a US corporation painting our skies. So I don't know if NOAA has restrictions. I haven't looked into it as to whether or not you're a foreign country and you could do this. What I do know is all that needs to be done, all they have to do is give NOAA 10 days notice, and they can go into the stratosphere and start pouring in toxins.
That's horrifying. I mean, I'm just glad we found it because we knew they were doing this. We can see it. But so what does it look like? What does the case look like? Where are we at there? And what is the outcome? What's the likelihood of the outcome?
What we did is we filed a very extensive lawsuit designed to basically support the whistleblower, and we blew the whistle through just being lawyers. We gathered all the data there is to gather in the United States in terms of all the investments taking place, all the patents that have been filed on behalf of the United States, the patents filed on behalf of private actors. We got all the investments that are going on, all the private companies that are investing in this and pouring out money to the university so that they can all study how they can intervene in the Earth's atmosphere. It's been going on for a long time, and there's a heck of a lot of money involved. Many hundreds of millions of dollars are invested over the last 10 years into doing what they can to intervene in the Earth's weather. It's pretty ridiculous, and it's just another attempt by man to just screw things up. I don't know how else to put it.
I've heard stories of like Marines when they're being trained going to they're going to go train them in this atmosphere. And so they've got it always storming when they're doing that. And I had heard several of the Marines say we think that they were doing that on purpose. So I'm assuming it was the same technology, and now they're just doing it on a larger scale.
I don't know. I don't know about that technology, but
Sure.
yeah. And one thing I'd like to say is what we see in our skies that you're referring to. I'm not saying those are the foreign corporations, or I'm sorry, or the corporations that are coming in and doing this. What I am saying
Okay.
is that the stuff in the skies, which is a different story, what we all see, the stuff in the skies is a compilation of commercial aircraft and potentially other aircraft that I cannot tell you what it is without a specific data point, right? Specific evidence in support of it. But what we do know is there's a lot of already existing contaminant in the sky called particulate matter. In other words, we do have some reports from NOAA where they go up and they look at the atmosphere and they see that the atmosphere is painted with a lot of small little particles that are about 1,000th of a foot, little teeny particles. It's called particulate matter, or ultrafine particles. And they're up there in the atmosphere now, which augments the condition we see in the sky. So if you don't see the stars like you used to, if you don't see a clear sky, if it always seems a little foggy, that's what's going on in part. And it's being added to by the commercial aircraft and most likely other aircraft that are nefarious actors that we're doing our best to get a handle on. That is coupled with the atmospheric pollution that's going to come in by these corporations that apparently believe, and it's true, it's not just they believe it, but they can come in and get a carbon credit for another business. They can say, look, we'll go up and we'll dim the sun a little bit for you. We'll put contaminants in the sky. We'll dim the sun a bit, and we'll get you a carbon credit, and you're off to the races, and you can give us money. So these are heavily invested corporations, meaning there's a lot of money that they received, heavily capitalized in order to engage in this.
It's the playbook that we fought in the beginning of COVID. You know, when he talks about data manipulation, the first thing that comes into my mind is just the horrors of the beginning of COVID. You know, from the PCR test nonsense to the deaths that were like motorcycle crashes that they tried to say were COVID and things like that. The lack of transparency. And then you and I forever now, Charity, have been screaming about informed consent and, just everything going against our constitutional rights and protections. People in the Freedom Brigades always want to know how to get involved, and kind of they want like a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm just hoping that they are excited and understand. They go and read this lawsuit. I implore everyone to go to the geofight.com and read it. And I want everyone at the Freedom Brigades to get involved. You can go to the freedombrigades.com, join us, and you can help our attorneys. Our attorneys do need help, that from evidence to boots on the ground soldiers to donations, honestly, because we want to do more of this at the Geofight. The Freedom Brigades are all grassroots activists, passionate people, Blake. And I'm hoping and praying that they feel a lot of hope after they hear about this lawsuit, because it's just one of many steps in the right direction in fighting this nonsense.
Right.
Like,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the other thing is, we're not here to make people scared. I am giving information. I'm not going to inflame it. I'm not going to make it seem like it's something more than it is. And we're not clickbait. Our goal here is not to be clickbaiting and get people excited or just fear-based. We are here to give data. And the data we gave is extremely intense. Our lawsuit contains about 66 references, and you can study up on your own. You can look at it yourself. You can look at the lawsuit, take a little section of it, just one page, and then you can dig deep, which is what people are good at. Dig deep and try to figure out for yourself what else is there to come forward. For example, we identify certain corporations that are investing, that are actually putting money into the coffers of the various businesses that are doing this, as well as the universities that are trying to intervene on our weather. So you can study up on them. You can ask yourself the question, do you want to continue to support these companies? Do you want to expose these companies, right? So this is important information. It's important to know how the money's getting to them. And it's important to know whether, you can put it this way, maybe there are certain airlines that are more pollutive than others. You can ask yourself the question, do you want to fly on those airlines? Because there is, in fact, and this is not mentioned in the lawsuit, but there is, in fact, what's known as SAF fuels, which is what they call sustainable fuels. And the sustainable fuels, this is a good question. I haven't really talked about it much on the air yet. The sustainable fuels are made out of biosludge. So a fuel, an alternative fuel that's used to bring airplanes through the sky, a jet fuel, is made out of biosludge. What's biosludge? Biosludge is what was used on farms as an alternative organic method for farming. All the farms that used the biosludge had to shut down because they contained intense bacteria and fungi that made the farm unusable. And all these farmers that had to use biosludge had to shut down. So biosludge was no longer used for farming, but instead now they're making fuel out of it. And this fuel is put into airplanes. You can study up on this. People who are listening to what I'm saying, go ahead and just look. You can Google it. What airlines are using biosludge for fuel? Using SAF fuels, sustainable airplane fuel. And so things like that, people can study up on, and you can research yourself and do your own campaign. You know, study up on this stuff and figure out what's happening and send it around to people. This lawsuit is designed to really generate these conversations and provide people as much information as possible.
You know, you said that they were destroying the data. Is there any way that that can be recovered, or is that just gone forever? Have they changed history? Have they stolen history from humankind?
That
Or
data that was destroyed is destroyed. It is
it's
not.
gone?
So let me put it in context. You know, at the end, if you've seen the movie, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, at the end of that movie, that big room where they put the Ark. Remember, at the end of the movie, there was this room, and it was huge. Mm-hmm. And that's where they put the Ark. And then, you know, it kind of looks like it's just put away for no one to pay attention to anymore, kind of deal. That is the room. That room is a humongous room. That is, I think it's 200,000 cubic. It's either 200,000 or 2,000 cubic feet of material. So the material was historical data that was not retained on a computer. This is 1900. This is 1890, 1895. This is a little old guy, you know, scratching stuff down on paper and setting forth his understanding and opinion and interpretation of the weather as it occurred all over the world. And it's complex, very, very complex. It's nothing like we understand in terms of how to understand weather. It's nothing that we, like the three of us listening right now and participating in this conversation, weather data is very complex. So this was done a long time ago without computers. And that, if you can picture that room, all that had to be organized and set up and interpreted based upon the techniques they were using for interpretation 100 years ago, which is not the techniques we use for interpretation today. And it changes over time, if you can imagine, right? Just as we understand medicine changes over time. So it's a very complex phenomenon. What was destroyed is destroyed. It's gone.
And so this wasn't a flash drive. This wasn't someone's computer being, you know, crashed Hillary Clinton style. It wasn't scrubbed. These were actual boxes and cases and tons of material that were literally destroyed.
Right. There is a Hillary Clinton scrub your computer story within this lawsuit as well.
Yeah.
It's an example of one of the problems with destroying data. But I can talk about that if you like. But no, this is actual paper, actual film, meaning like 35 millimeter film on the rolls and all that. I don't know. My hair is probably grayer than you guys. So I don't know if y'all remember that. I remember it when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah. I remember the smell. Remember the smell of those film canisters? Yes. I always said, like, that's just like childhood memory that is gone forever. But I mean, I was talking to Blake and a few people just in some Geofight groups that we were chatting about this lawsuit. And I got hyper one day because I talked about this, and I think I've talked about it with Charity too, where I remember, you know, like when we were kids, Charity, it was the ozone layer. The ozone layer is getting bigger, right? And it's all because of our Aquanet. It's all our Aquanet hairspray of the 80s. It's like the 80s hair destroyed. But then I'm in college. This is like when I'm a child, then I'm in college and someone says, well, we actually didn't have that much data. So that was all theory. And it might be that the ozone layer kind of goes like this over hundreds or thousands of years. It kind of flexes but the scientists thought that it was just going to keep going and we were all going to burn up. Like, again, the data to back up the science is critical. And when you talk about data that was actually hard evidence like that, like papers written down for 100 years or more, we need that in order to know where we're going. And what this lawsuit really, as you guys understand, but the crux of it, the bang over the head is, if you destroy that data, then are you intentionally manipulating a narrative to get an end goal? And we see all this money flowing. So, okay, you're flowing this money around and you're justifying it over here, but you're trying to use your justification on science that's been destroyed. How does, yeah. Well, but that seems to be the government's, the money-making scheme everywhere we look, right?
In the society where they're doing the Mandela effect, where they're gaslighting all generations, right? Saying, no, the cornucopia was never on Fruit of the Loom and all those things that they're doing. This is no surprise, right? Like it's a really unfortunate though, because the history that's lost, that's not like removing the cornucopia on Fruit of the Loom and telling you it was never there. And, all the Queen's song and all the things that they're saying, no, that's not the way it was. This is history that they're actually stealing to create a narrative for dangerous reasons, I believe. And that's very alarming. What else do you think the public, if you could pick out a few of the points that the public really needs to know, what would you say that we need to know? And what could we do to help you, if anything?
Well, I would say what's important. I think I've covered many of the elements of the lawsuit that are important to me. But I would say what's important is to document what you see in the skies, and there's ways of doing that. And what's important is to join us. By join us, what I simply mean is go to our website, and there's a little button called Join Us, and we will send you all the current data that we're coming up with. And let me tell you, we're inventing stuff daily and coming up with new ideas daily, new litigation strategies, and new methods of gathering evidence. And there's a new method that we have now that we're developing. And there was actually another method that we gathered last week. And we're constantly inventing ideas in order to do everything we can to combat this and to really make it where the world is participating. And the world is participating. We are getting comments from everywhere, from Australia to Europe. A lot of people are commenting. And the goal is to document so that patterns can be ascertained, right? Because they're trying to do this in a secret domain using complex particles that they're throwing up into the sky that's difficult for us to figure out. But there are techniques and ways of figuring it out. And there are scientists that are interested in figuring this out. And we have to do our best. So what you can do is go to the Geofight. It's thegeofight.com. And you can join us. You can donate. You can submit emails. You can submit video and photographs showing what's going on in your neck of the woods. You can tell us what complaints you have, what you notice with regards to yourself. And we look at it. We look at everything, and we understand the patterns that are developing. And these patterns are important. And actually, these patterns made their way into this lawsuit, meaning the information we got from the Geofight, from the website, actually made its way into this lawsuit. So it actually helped in the allegations. So to me, we have people that are very actively and very aggressively on a daily basis, Monday through Sunday, every single day. We are working on this. And if you want to participate and do something about it, go to the Geofight and simply click on the Join Us button. And with that, we will make you a member of this worldwide effort, and we will give you information that's essential through our outreach.
And Charity, remember when we were at AFLDS and I was Andrea Brockovich, and I talk a lot about how it was very gut-wrenching and heartbreaking every day.
very
to
much.
talk to families who, you know, either had a loved one who was medically kidnapped and being put on a vent and they couldn't get them out of the hospital, or, you know, people who were being forcibly vaccinated and were just begging us to find a way. How do I write a, you know, exemption, a religious exemption? How do I do anything to make sure that my son who's going off to play college ball doesn't have to get this vaccine? And at the time, you know, you're just in it and you're fighting. And I just want to say, Blake, when he says we go through this, a lot of it is him. He combs through your messages. He sees all of them. And one of the things, heart to heart kind of conversations we've had, is people are scared, and they rightfully are scared. They're also rightfully feeling the effects of this toxic junk that is being just dumped above our heads. And my pray and hope, and why I'm so passionate about working with these guys to get the message out, is that, again, this lawsuit and the Geofight's just passion to expose this and to really fight this corruption will give people hope, because that's really what AFLDS was doing in the beginning of COVID too. We were saying, okay, we're with you. We want to file lawsuits. We're trying to find plaintiffs in the right jurisdiction, and we want everyone to come in as a plaintiff. And we want to do the biggest, best lawsuit that will just knock this out once. But people have to understand it takes step by step. Like saying, there's a lot to this. But I encourage everyone to get involved in any way they can. Like he said, even just sending pictures of, look up at your sky and send them in. Let us know what's going on with you and your family in this fight, because this momentum is building. And again, I think people are feeling very hopeful. But it is hard. It is hard seeing how many submissions that Blake has gone through, and the real pain and suffering that farmers are going through, and families, you know, kids with asthma and things like that. They're affected. They get sprayed and they feel it. You can't lie to us anymore, because we're actually feeling the effects in real time.
Well, the whole nation is crying for accountability, like
Yes.
in everything. And so to see somebody doing something and saying, we're fighting back, and this is, we're doing something about it. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm excited. So go to the geofight.com. I will be checking out the website myself a little bit more. I'm really excited. Thank you for doing that. And anything that we can do to help you, please let us know. We're all in this together. You guys, you take back your republic by taking back your community. Go to freedombrigades.com and join us there. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Blake.
Thank you. Thank you very much.